Actually, I think it was going before. Well, it looks like it's going now. Hey guys, what's going on, man? I haven't done a video for this channel in quite a long time. I apologize. An actual video. I've been trying to do the live feeds every time I get on the air, and you guys seem to enjoy those. I enjoy them, so I do try to do that. But an actual video I haven't done in, I don't know, a long time. And I apologize. I'm very busy. 60 plus hours a week working, 2 teenagers, and XYL, you know the drill. Plus, if that wasn't enough, I have another YouTube channel that's a really big YouTube channel on a totally unrelated subject. Other than the live feeds, I haven't actually sat down to do a video for various reasons. But since I upgraded my license last night, I thought I would do a video. And I don't know what I titled it. You've already seen it, but I'll make it some funny clickbait thing like I got my license in 3 days or something. I don't know. I'll think of something. Which is partially true, not exactly true. So if you came looking for a shortcut, I'm going to give you that kind of more, I'm going to give you some tips on how to expedite the process, in my opinion. But everybody studies, learns, and retains things at different intervals. So I don't know if it'll help you out or not. But the first question you got to ask is, do you want to upgrade to amateur extra if you're already a general? Now, ever since I got my general years ago, of course, I've thought about it from time to time. And there's been 2 reasons, maybe 3 reasons. One's really irrelevant, just maybe bragging rights for whatever that's worth. But 2 main reasons I've contemplated it and taken a couple runs at it over the years and got sidelined each time until yesterday, about 3 days before yesterday, actually Sunday. Yesterday was Wednesday, so Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then I tested on Wednesday. Lost my train of thought. But the reasons I have may be very different than yours, so let's go over the reasons I wanted to. And one turned out to be null and void of all things because I don't know how this happened. Or when it happened, or maybe it's always been. I don't even know. It seems like a participation trophy. And if you guys have watched some of my other videos, you'll know I have a little disdain for the AARRL and the VECs in charge of the whole licensing process. And we'll get to that in a minute. But reason number 1, I've thought about upgrading my license for years is to shorten my call sign. I have a vanity call, and I'm struggling with this. I haven't done it yet, and I might do it and I might not, but I would like to drop 1 letter off my call sign, the S at the end. The S seems a little bit hard, even though I'm not a DXer. DX stations struggle with it, even if we don't have a really good copy. So I might just drop the S, making it a 2x2 call, which I thought was reserved for advanced class operators and extra. Now, advanced they don't test for anymore. They haven't for like 25 years or something like that. But I thought you had to be an amateur, extra, or advanced to have a 2x2 call. Or someone that lived in Alaska. I'm not sure why that is even in there or relevant. There's plenty of 2x3 calls for Alaskans too, but whatever. But I thought that was the case. Well, it wasn't but a few hours before I tested that I stumble upon, or even look up, or whatever, some information. And turns out, for some reason, I could have got a 2x2 call as a general through the vanity call thing, as long as it didn't start with an A. So mine starts with a W. I could have just done a 2x2 call years ago, but I didn't know I could. So if it used to be, to my knowledge, or what I thought, which turns out to be all wrong, and you know, everybody gets a trophy. They're probably going to have technicians with 1x2s and 2x2s as long as it's a vanity call coming up soon. I don't know, but it used to be, or it was always my understanding, and I could be wrong, but this is what I thought, was a technician, you would get a 2x3 call. Okay, either one assigned to you, or you could get a vanity call 2x3. As a general, I thought, and there's nothing wrong with that. My Elmer has a 2x3 call, and he's been an extra for longer than I've been alive. So some people just keep their calls forever, right? But if you wanted to be identified as your call, or have access to certain calls. It used to be 2x3 for technician or novice back in the day, technician. And then if you were a general, you could get a 1x3 if you wanted to step up to a 1x3. And then advanced and extra, you could get a 2x2. And then extra only gave you access to 1x2s and 2x1s. Well, apparently that's out the window for the most part. So nonetheless, reason number one, I was thinking of getting an extra, that got thrown out the window. Number two, reason I wanted to get an extra was the extra bandwidth, but not for what most people would want it for. Most people want it for the rare DX station. I'm not a DXer. I mean, yeah, okay, it's cool to talk to out of countries and stuff, and I just picked up another island, and hey, yeah, okay, that's cool, but I'm just a rag chewer, man. I just like to talk to people. I don't care if they're in the same state or another country. It makes no difference to me. I like the hobby just because I like to talk. I have the gift for gab. So, but the extra band space for me, and I'm about to ruffle some feathers here, so if you have an ARRL hat on and you think they're the greatest thing, you might want to stop this video and stop here, and then a little bit later when I talk more about it, you might not want to hear, you're probably not going to like me in a minute, but the ARRL and all their infamous wisdom, they love to put contests together, and there's nothing wrong with contests. It's not my thing. I'd rather watch paint dry, but if you guys want to sit there and scream 5.9 all day, cool, have at it. And if getting 300 contacts in a day does something for you, that's cool, man. Different strokes for different folks. But what I don't like is the ARRL will make a contest during the summer, many of them, that tie up the whole weekend when us working people are off, and they'll put them on all the major bands. The only bands they won't be on, of course, is 17 meters, the work band, and 30 meters. But 20 and 40 and 10 and yeah, whatever. The major bands everybody talks on will be completely wiped out with contesters. So guys like me, we end up just turning our radios off, which wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't every stinking weekend. Sometimes they'll do it for 3 or 4 weekends in a row, and it's irritating. I wish they would do like 20 meters one weekend, 40 the next, 10 the next, but nope, they'll have the contest on all the bands. It's a big free-for-all. So the extra band space to me is they generally do not extend the contest into the extra portion, and if they do, there will not be a lot of contesters up there because they limit themselves to the contacts they can get, right? There's only going to be extras up there when the vast majority of operators are in the general class. So for overall numbers, whether they have an extra license or not, they're going to migrate down into the general portion of the band to get the most contacts. So reason number 2 is still there. So now that I have my extra, when they do that nonsense, I can go ahead and go up into the extra portion, which would probably be the only time you hear me up there, most likely. I just don't find extras in the extra portion all that interesting. I mean, of course, I've listened to them over the years. You know, they're an entity to their own, so nothing wrong with them. I'm not here to badmouth them. I just think the party is generally in the general portion anyway, so I will still be there, Roger. So let's talk about it. How did so what I was getting at is you got to find your own reason to upgrade. Is it necessary to have an extra license? No, the majority of everything is in the general. But if you want the extra band space, the bragging rights, or access to a 1x2 or 2x2, get it now, because they'll probably start giving them to technicians next week. But if you want one of those calls, then maybe that'd be a motivation factor for you. So now, over the years, I've taken a couple runs at it. One run was back during COVID. I had studied up and the old school way, which we're going to talk about that in a minute, kind of the old school way, but you still had to go in for testing. Now they do it online. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Another cool new thing. I had studied up and I think 2 weeks away, I was going to go get my extra, and COVID hit and they shut down all testing, and the testing was one of the last things to ever come back, you know, because mostly older people, and they were really worried about COVID and more at risk. So the old goats that do the testing, at the Ham Radio Club, they were the last ones to show back up. So testing got shut down for quite a while. And by the time it resumed, I had lost interest and forgot enough of what I had crammed in my brain to pass. I wouldn't have passed. So after that, I think I thought about it one other time. And then last July, I thought I would make another run at it. And I actually bought the new book because, I got an itchy nose here. Because the last time I made a run at it was the old pool. So I went out and I bought this book. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And I actually signed up for Ham Radio Prep, which I got a note down here, was like $30. So last July, I read this book and studied this book a little. Now, this is not how I would recommend you passing your test. It is a way to do it, but it's not the best way. And but I give everything an honest shot, and I wanted to see what was in this book, which 99% completely useless in my opinion. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But I did read the book cover to cover, picked up a little bit. And if you're a new ham and you're getting into the technician in general, the books are about this big compared to this big. So you don't have as much to read. And go ahead and read it. At your leisure. I read a lot anyways. I read my Bible every day. I read several other books. So reading this wasn't no big deal. I wanted to see what was in there. And like I said, if you're new, you'll pick up a few things, okay? So I got this book, and I signed up for Ham Radio Prep, and I started to study. And it was July, and then we traveled for a wedding back to Idaho. And guess what? I got something popping up on my screen. I got distracted by life again. So around middle of July, I walked away after a few weeks of studying. So that brings us up till about 3 days ago. So it's not necessarily true that I only studied for 3 days. I did study a little bit about 7 months ago. How much I retained from 7 months ago? Not much. So how did I pass my test in just 3 days? Well, what happened was we just got a huge snowstorm and bitter cold single-digit temperatures down here. Now, I'm my own business, a trucking company, and I decided to just take the week off because I get to make those decisions. I just didn't want to work. Well, I decided that Friday, well, I'm like a kid with ADD. I get bored real easy. I don't watch TVs. I don't play video games. I don't watch sports. I work and a little bit of radio. So within 2 days, I realized, oh man, I'm going to be driving my wife nuts because I want to be inside. Now, if it was warm outside, it'd be a different story. And of course, I wouldn't be off work, but I could go out and do things. But I was actually going to be in this house for pretty much the whole week because it's just too daggum cold out there to do anything. And just by walking into my radio room, I caught a glimpse of this book and my light bulb went off. And I thought, I wonder if I could get it done in a week. I don't know. I got nothing else to do. At least it'll occupy my time and keep me out of the XYL's hair. So about Sunday morning, Saturday night, I kind of looked around at YouTube and getting some ideas how to study and how I wanted to go about this. And now that's what I'm going to get to, how I think is the easiest way and might ruffle some more feathers, but how to get your license, be it a tech, general, or extra. So what I did is I got some online study tools. Now in the back of this, you can, and I actually, back when I was doing this, I went through and highlighted all the answers, and you can read questions and answers, which is cool, but this is a big clumsy book, and you can do that with your little smartphone. So what I did was, and I'll give a shout out to each of these guys, and throw their thing up here on the screen. I used Ham Radio Prep. They have some practice tests and study tools. And the guy in the video with the funny hat with a monotone voice that'll put you to sleep, he does have some good information. And I watched a few of his videos, and surprising what little things load up into the processor. Keywords, buzzwords, things to help you remember certain parts of the test. And that is the key there. And then I also got hamstudy.org. And Ham Radio Prep, if I didn't mention, I think I paid $30 for it. I did that last July. I think it's good for a year. I don't know. It's still good. I can still log in. Ham radio or hamstudy.org also is a great resource. I don't know if I think you can pay for that. I was using the free subscription, but that's one of the places you can set up your online test. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Something that's changed since the last time I did any testing in a good way. And then my favorite of all, and I'll try to throw screenshots of all these up here during the video so you can search for them. Ham Test Online, and I paid $30 for that. It's a 3-month subscription. I only used it for 3 days, but was the best by far. So basically, because it had study mode, and when you missed something, it had a instantaneous click on, and it would bring it up and explain why the answer is what the answer is. And though you may not remember all that, you'll pick out keywords to load into your processor to help you remember. So basically, what I did was I used those 3 resources, and I sat around for 3 days, questions and answers, questions and answers, questions and answers, questions and answers, and practice test, practice test, practice test. Now, when I started Sunday, my first practice test, I was around 44%. Then, after a little bit of study, I crawled up to around the 60%, which I seemed to stay there for most of Sunday and part of Monday. By Monday afternoon, I was getting close to passing. By Monday afternoon, I still couldn't pass a test to save my life. Not even close. But Tuesday, like the end of Tuesday, I was starting to pass on a somewhat consistent basis at about a 74 to 78%. You need 74% to pass, 37, right, I think. So I would pass, fail, pass, up and down. Tuesday, about the same thing, started out in the day. But by Tuesday night, man, I was really passing very consistent. And I was beginning to think, man, I might be able to do a test tomorrow afternoon. Because let's talk about that real quick. What's changed is you can do this all online through Zoom, which is like the coolest thing ever. And they got all kinds of, on the hamstudy.org, find a test or a session, they call it, whatever. That all around the country, the people that tested me were in Washington. I mean, I'm from Idaho, so it's kind of cool to talk to some people back home. In fact, a guy was down in an area that I used to run when I worked for UPS, so small world. But you might... he was in Washington, one of the VEs was in South Carolina, and I don't remember where the other one was. So it's all online, pretty simple. You set up a Zoom, they make you scan the room to make sure you don't have notes all over the wall. And you share the screen with them. Heck, I forgot they were there when I was testing. It's just like I've been doing online. It's like another practice test. Super easy. Pay your $15. Don't even have to leave the house. You can do it in your jammies. Kind of nice. And not that I would get stressed out very easy, but if you do get stressed out, it's less intimidating than driving down to the hall or the local club and whatever. So that is pretty cool. That's I don't know when that came about, but it wasn't around back when I did my tech in general. So it's somewhat new and a very cool new thing in the ham radio world. Anyways, where I was, Tuesday evening I was passing them really good. Wednesday morning I was smoking them. I may not know why the answer was the answer, and everybody learns at a different pace, but I had stacked enough information in my brain to get these questions right, even if I didn't know why they were right. And I know that might ruffle some old hams, and we're going to talk about them in a minute. But it just was what it was. So I told the wife, I said, hey, I'm going to try a test today. My actual goal was to pass by Friday, which is tomorrow. So I beat that by 2 days, and I thought, I think I'll try it, and then I failed the test. I'm like, oh, how did I go from 80 down to 68 or whatever, 70? I'm like, darn, man, maybe I've overloaded my brain. So I went outside and took a little break and came back in and passed a couple more. I thought, I'm going to give it a try. Man, it's $15. So if I fail, I'll come back Thursday or Friday. I'll cram a little more and get it done. So I went ahead and I said, all right, let's set this up. So I set it up for yesterday evening by 5 o'clock. And you never know what test you're going to get. And some, for me, are easier than the other. It's just a random generated test out of a pool of 700 and something questions. You get 50 questions. And the test that I got when I was taking it was like the first 5 questions. I'm like, I've never seen these questions before. But I don't know which ones I'd passed or missed or whatever. I didn't ask, didn't care. But I was like, crap, I'm going to fail. But I talked myself through and tried to put it in. I said, well, I think that's it, and we'll go with that. I ended up getting like a 94% or 92%. And done deal by like 5:30 yesterday afternoon. So now I'm an amateur extra. I don't think my call sign is not even in the database yet, let alone on QRZ. But it'll be there in a day or two. Actually, they told me they said it'll probably be up there tomorrow because everything's electronic, a lot faster than it used to be. So that's how I did it in a couple, 3 days. Well, will that help you? I don't know. Now I'll give you my overall thoughts on the material of the testing, and I'm going to probably ruffle some feathers here. So again, if you got thin skin, you might want to shut the video off now if you haven't shut it off already. So what do I think of what's in this book? Garbage. I don't know what it is with the ham radio world. I have such a disdain for the ARRL and the VECs in charge of the gatekeepers of this community. They're just so scared to death of a CBer is the only thing I can come up with, which is not good for our hobby. And despite the false information they like to put out, they'll tell you more people are getting in ham radio now than ever. Well, by the numbers maybe, but not per capita. The population has almost doubled since in the last 50 years. So 20 years ago, there's 1 billion more people on the planet, right? So that doesn't mean percentage-wise we're going down. So if 1% of the population used to get into ham radio, now it's down to 0.5%. Now the numbers are bigger, but not the per capita numbers. And I think it's because they just go out of their way to put questions in there. And I know we got to have some questions, but a CBer, a true CBer, is not going to spend time reading anything. So I don't think you have to worry about it. I just think you could put material that's actually useful to people when they get into the hobby in those books. I don't remember the tech in general. There's probably a little bit more in there that is helpful and less redundant, but this book is a joke. 99% of what's in there, 99% of us will never use. Let's be honest. 99% of us are appliance operators. We're never going to take the covers off of radios and get in there. And if we did, what is in that book would only be good for old radios. They're talking about resistors, diodes, and crystals. We don't use that anymore. It's all surface mount technology. Get out of here. And people that are in to tinkering around with radios, old or new, are not going to use that book to learn anything. That's useless. They'll learn their electrical theory and develop their skill via much better resources than that. So, in their ever living quest to make themselves seem smarter than they are or keep CBers out at all costs, they just overcomplicated that to I think to deter people. But an old redneck from Missouri beat you at your own game in 3 days. So how's that? But I think that if they would have put things in there that are more useful to the modern day hams, like where to operate, how to operate, and things like that, and more safety, they'll tell you, well, we do all this transistors and all that to keep you safe. No, you don't. You don't talk about any of that in those sections of the book. There's like 11 sections. One is on safety, and it's mostly make sure you tie yourself off when you're climbing up a tower. So I can't remember, maybe in the tech they talked about, if you open an amplifier up, be careful because that could kill you. There's none of that in the extra book. So maybe they did that before, so I'll cut them a little slack there. But it's really a wasted book that I learned absolutely nothing from. I know absolutely no more now than I did 4 days ago when I was a general, or 7 months ago when I last kind of studied it. I gained almost nothing in knowledge. A little bit of stuff on some antenna theory and things like that. A little bit more on the Smith chart, which might help me in my antenna building. But that's about it. Out of 100%, I got less than 2% out of that book. So I don't know if they're really making the ham radio world better. But as these old goats kick the bucket and start pushing up daisies, we're moving newer people in and slowly, like churning peanut butter or molasses, changing things. They finally got rid of the code, which kept people out. And every year they do drop more and more of the old questions that are so outdated. It's ridiculous. So the new question pool is always a little bit better, but it's a very slow and arduous process, which is not good for the hobby, in my opinion. All right, guys, that's it. That's all I got for you. 25-minute video, just telling you how I upgraded my license in 3 days, why I did, and my thoughts on the overall process. All right, guys, God bless you. And hope to hear you on the air. 7-3. Bye now.